It's now 6 p.m. and the January 21st meeting of Dublin San Ramon Service District Board of Directors is called to order. Please join me in the Pledge of the Flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Go on to roll call.
Director Johnson?
Here.
Director Von Heater-Leopold?
Here.
Director Govinda Rao?
Here.
Vice President Halkett?
I'm here.
President Goel?
Here. Okay, moving on to item 4, special announcements and activities. 4A, new employee introductions.
President Goel, members of the board, Steve Delight. I'm going to introduce Dan Pedaniccio, who will introduce our newest member of our field operations team.
Good evening, board. President Goel. My name is Dan Pednicio. I'm a water wastewater system supervisor for Field Operations Division. Here to introduce Jesus Ponce. He's our latest water wastewater systems operator 1. Jesus comes to the district with over 7 years of experience in the industry, including water distribution, sewer collections, and storm treatment systems. In his most recent role with the city of Fairfield, he was a water operator working on water main repairs, valve repairs, and sewer collections maintenance. Jesus holds a CWA collections maintenance grade 1, water treatment operator 2, water distribution operator D2 certifications. He also has an associate's degree in water wastewater technology and a Class A driver's license. Jesus grew up in and still lives in Fairfield. He enjoys going on scenic drives in multiple cars that he owns. His motto, which I like this, it's miles per gallon, not miles per gallon. I really, that's the first time I've ever heard that, so thank you.
That's good.
He also enjoys hiking at national parks, traveling, and trying new restaurants. Please join me in welcoming Jesus Ponce to the district, and we're glad to have him.
Awesome. Welcome.
Welcome.
That's awesome.
So I'm thankful to be given the opportunity to work for a district like Dublin San Ramon. 3 weeks in, and I noticed the difference from where I came from. The hospitality here is great, so thank you.
Awesome.
Good.
Welcome.
Good.
So, we're going to challenge you here. You came up with smiles for a gallon, so you're going to have to come up with something to do with savings.
Hey, less stress when you enjoy driving the way you drive. It's less stress. You come to work happier.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to item 5, public comment. At this time, those in the audience are encouraged to address the board on any item of interest that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and not already included on tonight's agenda. Comments should not exceed 5 minutes. Are there any speaker cards from members of the public? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, agenda management. Staff.
No recommended changes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, the consent calendar. Matters listed under this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless requested by a member of the board or the public prior to the item the board votes on a motion to adopt.
I'll move consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion from Director Govinda Rao and a second by Director Von Heater-Leopold to approve the consent calendar. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 8, board business. Item 8A, approve amendment number 1 to the amendment for personal services between General Manager Jan Lee and Dublin San Ramon Services District. Staff.
Thank you, President Goel. I think this item falls to me to introduce, and I will keep it brief. As the board is aware, you went through recently a performance evaluation process with your general manager, the first since she was brought under contract in December of 2023. At the conclusion of that process, the board directed that staff bring back an action that would adjust the. I'm going to accomplish two things right now, both making the statements required under the Brown Act to detail what you are about to do and give you the details about what you're going to do just as a normal staff report. Would be adjusting the general manager's base salary by 2.64%, which is equal to $8,477.52 annually, and then adjusting that base salary by 2.3%, a cost of living adjustment of $7,580.76 annually. So the total changes to the general manager's compensation after application of the merit and COLA adjustments is 5% for $16,058.28, which is a new base salary annually of $337,176. And that change is retroactive to December 23rd, 2024, which is the, if I understand correctly, the first day of the pay period, including the first of the year. So with that, if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them. But if none, I pass it back to the board for discussion.
Thank you for the presentation. Does anyone from the board have any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the resolution for item 8A?
I'll move approval.
Okay, got a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion from Director Von Heater Leopold and a second by Director Govinda Rao to approve the resolution for item 8A. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 8B. Adopt a pay schedule in accordance for the California Code of Regulations Title II, Section 570.5, requirement for a publicly available pay schedule, and rescind resolution number 50-24. Staff.
Samantha Kohler, Human Resources and Risk Management, will review this item for the board.
Good evening, Director Goel, members of the board. The item I'm presenting this evening is the adoption of the district's publicly available pay schedule. The pay schedule before the board has been updated with the revised monthly and biweekly base salary rates and effective date for the general manager as approved by the board this evening in item 8A. Staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you, staff. Any questions from the board?
I'll move approval.
Do I have a second?
I can second.
Okay, I have a motion by Director Halkett and a second by Director Johnson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 8C. Receive a presentation on the 2025 strategic plan update. Staff.
President Goel, members of the board, this evening staff will be providing a presentation on the 2025 strategic plan update. Here this evening to provide the presentation are two members from the West Yost team, Abigail Madrone, Vice President for West Yost, and David Garrison, Outreach and Communications Lead. Before I hand it over to this team, I did want to provide some brief background on the process for updating the district's strategic plan. So the district's strategic plan is a 5-year planning document that incorporates the district's mission and vision statements and outlines key strategies and action items that the district seeks to accomplish over the 5-year period. The current strategic plan covers fiscal years 2024 to 2028 and was adopted by the board in April of 2023. Every 2 years, concurrent with the biennial budget process, staff works with the board to update the strategic plan. This is an opportunity to make sure the strategic plan reflects the priorities of the current board and leadership team and to ensure alignment within the organization on efforts needed to achieve the district's mission. Last fall, the district contracted with West Yost to assist the district with developing the 2025 strategic plan update. The draft plan and structure that you will see this evening reflects staff's desire to have a strategic plan that is both aspirational and actionable, with clear steps and accountability to measure and celebrate success. The process of working with the board on the strategic plan occurs over multiple meetings. This evening, West Yost will present the first draft of the 2025 strategic plan update for board discussion and input. Based on the feedback we received this evening, staff will return on March 4th with a second draft of the strategic plan. And depending on the level of input we receive on March 4th, the staff may consider or ask the board to consider adopting the strategic plan on March 18th. And with that, I will turn it over to Abigail and David.
Thank you, Jan. Good evening, President Goel and members of the board. I'm Abigail Madrone, Vice President with West Yost, and this is my colleague David Garrison, Outreach and Communications Lead for West Yost, and we're really happy to be here this evening. I'm really proud of the work that staff and the DSRSD group have done to bring this plan to all of you this evening. So as Jan, Ms. Lee mentioned, West Yost was engaged to develop an updated strategic plan. The focus of our work was to ensure that the updated plan is both aspirational and actionable, in addition to identifying clear steps and accountability to measure and celebrate success. Our presentation is aligned to the following discussion topics. We will lead with an overview and timeline of the 2025 strategic plan update, provide proposed strategic plan structure, review mission, vision, and values, as well as strategic goals, strategies, objectives, and next steps. As Ms. Lee mentioned, on November 6th, West Yost facilitated a strategic planning session with full leadership that consists of the district's executive managers and mid-managers. The purpose of the session was to support staff alignment on district priorities and for staff to collaborate on a strategic plan update. In partnership with the senior management team and output from the strategic planning session, we use that information to inform and develop the draft 2025 strategic plan update that we are presenting here this evening. The plan update provides clarity and structure and language refinement to reinforce the quality and content as well as core elements. We're excited to engage the board of directors in this presentation of goals, objectives, strategies, and concepts developed by district staff. And as Ms. Lee mentioned, a second draft will follow in March prior to potentially finalizing the 2025 strategic plan update for consideration of adoption. So the strategic plan is organized first as a strategic plan, which is both visionary and guiding, and will consist of the following sections. Please note that staff recommended including a message from the board president and general manager to highlight the importance of the strategic plan to the organization and to the public, and to align on a shared commitment to the district's future direction and priorities. The work plan is focused on implementation and action. As you will note, the work plan includes projects, lead, and support departments as new elements of the work plan. This is to help focus on action and implementation. This evening, we invite all of your comments. We are requesting specific direction on items to be added, removed, clarified, or revised. My colleague David Garrison, who will be presenting these strategic goals, will pause in between each goal in order to receive feedback. So we welcome your comments. Please do not reserve your question and comments to the end of the presentation. We're looking to get feedback along the way. No changes are being proposed in the 2025 strategic plan update to the mission statement. The vision communicates where the district is going and reinforces the district's values and commitment to achieving its goals. Minor edits to the last sentence reflect staff's input that the district be viewed as innovative in meeting future challenges. The revision notes innovation in navigating our ever-changing industry. An example of this is maximizing recycled water to reduce nutrient discharges to the San Francisco Bay. No changes are being proposed in the 2025 strategic plan update to the values. Westios was not specifically asked to review and work on values with the district. We did, however, note that the district's list of values are fairly extensive and they may overlap with the goals. As a future effort, the district may want to consider paring down the list of values to 4 to 5 core values to help emphasize and reinforce the culture of the district. And with that, I will transition the presentation to my colleague, David Garrison.
Evening. I'll now go over the 6 goals that were identified in the strategic planning process, as well as the surveys and interviews that led up to our session. A lot of these concepts you will recognize from the existing strategic plan. We broadened some of them and brought some of them together, which we think will provide additional emphasis on those efforts. Each goal has been broken down into strategies and objectives, which we'll go through each one. And you can also follow along in the board packet for more detail in addition to the presentation. Our 6 goals include environmental protection and regulatory compliance, long-term financial stability and sustainability, workforce development and planning, resilient and effective operations, long-term infrastructure investment, and customer service and community engagement. Our first goal, environmental protection and regulatory compliance, has 2 strategies, which we'll go over. And want to note that this was continuously and unanimously brought up by staff, both through the interview process, the survey process, and as well as the session itself. This was identified as a top priority for the district. You will notice that it is carried over from the expanded 2023 update. The why statement behind this goal is to meet or exceed environmental and public health standards while preparing for the future regulatory landscape. Strategy A for this goal is to minimize impacts to the environment by reducing, recycling, and conserving natural resources, which we will do by increasing the use and generation of renewable energy, maximize water recycling to reduce nutrient discharges, as well as conserve potable water supplies through efficiency, and more. Strategy B is to operate and maintain district facilities to meet or exceed regulatory requirements while preparing for the future regulatory landscape. We'll do that by developing and maintaining a centralized system for overseeing and tracking those requirements, collaborating with partner agencies to monitor evolving regulatory requirements, and sustain a robust safety culture by continuously updating the district's environmental health and safety programs. Are there any questions or comments about our goal 1? Okay.
Pretty straightforward. Thank you.
All right, I'll take us forward. Potentially. There we go. Goal 2, long-term financial stability and sustainability. There are 2 strategies associated with this goal. The why statement is to manage the district's finances to meet funding needs and maintain fair and reasonable water and wastewater rates. You will notice that this is again carryover from our 2023 update. Staff is proposing to modify the goal language to remove the portion of the district striving to limit rate increases to no more than general inflation trends. With many costs rising at rates higher than inflation, staff felt that the primary emphasis should be on meeting the district's funding needs. With the conversion of the district's financial system to munis, Strategy 2 was added to emphasize the need to have documented procedures that reflect current practices. And we'll get to that strategy in a moment. So Strategy A is to ensure financial sustainability through long-term financial planning. We'll do that by maintaining a 10-year financial planning model that includes long-term forecasts and more, and plan for rate increases that are steady, predictable, and based on our strategic needs. Strategy B is to enhance accountability and transparency in financial management. We'll do that by providing accurate, timely, and informative financial reports and regularly review and update financial processes, procedures, and policies. Any questions about this goal?
So on strategy A, on the plan for rate increases that are steady, predictable, and based on strategic needs, shouldn't we also have anything to do with meeting any sort of regulatory requirements of rate compliance?
Just to clarify, President Goel, are you talking about compliance with Prop 218, the law, or compliance with needing to meet regulatory requirements for our operations?
The first piece.
The first one is included in the district's policy for rate setting.
I'm just calling it out because the way this ends, it says based on our strategic needs.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of like looking at the verbiage there.
And one more verbiage. Perhaps the word adjustments might be better than increases. We have decreased rates before when we've been able to. So we adjust our rates periodically based upon our current financial and our future financial needs.
I think that
They don't
makes
always
sense.
go up.
Yeah, I think that makes
Yeah.
sense. Is saying, hey, we may find an opportunity for efficiency or cost savings. We don't want to always look like we're coming out for a positive rate change.
So you thinking rate changes instead of rate increases?
Yeah, I mean, I would say plan for rate adjustments instead of increases.
Yeah, I think
They almost always go up,
yeah,
but they don't
I
always.
really
Yeah.
like that. And
Yeah.
I think what you were trying to get at is the whole strategic needs. Why is it just strategic needs? Why isn't it just needs or business needs? Or, I
Yeah.
mean,
Something. Yeah.
Thank you, President Goel and directors. Any
I
other
do-
comments about?
Yeah, another comment here.
Of course.
So part of the long-term financial stability and sustainability, I know, Ken, last week we talked about, the investment portfolio and such. Is there some kind of discussion or objective in there about talking about our long-term investment portfolio and, just making sure that we're really putting some attention to that and it's not getting lost? Because I think at times it seems like, we kind of forget about it and then, where we may have potential opportunities for better investment returns. So that's something I think we should really look at and how we can add that to this component. I was looking at the other 6 and I didn't feel like it really fit anywhere else. And I think this would be a good place to add it.
So question for you. If you can flip to strategy B, second bullet, does the and policies, procedures and policies capture that?
I don't think it's clear.
It's not
I don't
clear
think
enough.
it's clear.
What would you recommend? Is that the bullet that you're proposing to be modified?
Either modifying or add a third bullet, about evaluating, just evaluating our investment portfolios and looking for opportunities in that area. So I'm not sure exactly the wording off the top of my head.
Endeavor to maximize the return on the investment
Sure.
portfolio while within the boundaries of our investment policy, the board adopted investment policy.
Staff can take that back
Something like that.
and look at some language suggestions to address your comment.
Right.
And then I would also add that what builds out from these objectives are actually a list of projects as well. And one of the projects that's been identified is the investment portfolio, but we can certainly add some language that sort of is more of an umbrella in terms of looking and trying to maximize our investment portfolio.
No, thank you, Jan. And I just think that if it's stated here in the objectives, it'll just be, closer attention will be upon it.
Totally concur. Yeah.
Right. And then President, I can always come up with language next time. I just didn't have anything off the top of my head here.
Sorry to jump in. I was just riffing.
You did a great job with adding it on the fly. But I just, something, and I think if staff can come back or if need be, I can, try to put something down for next meeting.
I think staff has enough direction.
Yep.
We do, and that is the reason we bring this back as a second draft to see
Okay.
if we've captured your intent correctly.
Great,
Then-
thank you.
And then one addendum there is, it was probably 10 or 12 years ago when we added commercial paper as an allowable investment. We haven't really looked at our investment policy in a long time.
great timing because on March 4th, Chandler, who the board just approved to bring on as our third party investment advisor, will be coming to make a presentation. They have reviewed the investment portfolio and they will be having a discussion
Awesome.
with the board on
We'll
that.
buy a lot of Bitcoin or something. No,
They probably already have.
They do.
good.
And then
I'm
Jan,
glad to hear that.
And let me, I'm trying to swivel my head a little bit. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on this one, Ken?
No.
No, we did have a discussion with a meeting with the Chandler Group, and they were aware of that situation, or we made them aware of that situation, and they had some comments on that, and so they'll be here to give a full presentation on the portfolio, the management of it. They want to make some changes to the policy, and so far they're doing a really good job. So we're very pleased to have them.
That's great
thanks,
news.
Ken. Just a clarification. So that meeting is on the 4th of March, correct? And
Correct.
then when is the second draft meeting? Is that after that meeting?
It is on March 4th as well.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can have that meeting, prior to this meeting, just in case if there is some language we would like to add from that.
I think you're asking for that agenda item to be prior to this agenda.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, put
We
that agenda
can we can certainly do
first.
that, and then I'll just also add that there's sort of 3 bites of the apple here. So this is bite 1, then we bring the second draft, and then the third time this item will come before the board is on March 18th. So we can also make edits between March 4th and March 18th.
Okay.
A lot of the recommendations or a lot of what the discussion will be with Chandler on March 4th would be edits to the investment policy that the board may want to consider.
Got it. Thank you.
So when you say investments, are you including debt management and reserves management?
I'm looking at the whole portfolio. Absolutely.
Because when I hear investments, I think something a little bit different.
Well, we have a lot of cash we put places, and we want to.
Yeah, it's because we have made changes to the debt that we hold as well as when rate changes
Absolutely.
come about. And then with regards to reserves, we do sometimes talk about how much we need to have in reserve, vice versa, rebates and etc. So I don't know if we need to say something about reserves or not, but I guess maybe it's inclusive in item number 2. I'm just wondering what's really actionable in item number 2, except reading stuff and making sure the lawyers agree. I mean, that's how I read bullet number 2. We're going to look to make sure we're not going to go to jail. I don't think that that's terribly aspirational. So maybe there's something in conjunction with
Sure.
what you were mentioning that would
I think that'd be good to make sure that's
make
clear.
item number 2 come a little bit more alive.
Yep.
So it sounds like there's a portion of the financial policy to consider debt and reserves, and then maybe potentially some sort of rewording or a relook at bullet number 2 on strategy 2B.
We can certainly relook at the language to make it a little bit more actionable. What we can also look at is the list of potential projects that staff is working on and maybe try to elevate or move something up. Under that one, as I recall, part of what we were looking at was, potential debt financing for larger capital projects. So there are a number of different measures. Part of what we do is we wait to see how the board receives and the input on these concepts, and then we go back and build it out. So I think what we can do is take another look at what we're considering for the project list and try to make this a little more actionable.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Turn it back over.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the lively feedback, valuable feedback. We live for strategic planning, so that was a real treat to see, so thank you. We'll move us to our next goal. So goal 3 is workforce development and planning. The why statement here is to maintain a culture that attracts, retains, and engages a high-performing workforce in support of the district's mission and values. And there are 3 strategies associated with this goal. This is, of course, another one carryover from our 2023 update. This was also ranked very high by staff in the interview survey and planning process, with an emphasis on knowledge, training, and mentorship programs, in addition to making sure that the district is planning for the succession of key positions when possible. So strategy A, in association with this goal, is to diversify and strengthen the skills of district employees to meet evolving workforce demands through participation in professional organizations and development programs. We'll do that by formalizing on-the-job training programs, establish a mentorship system to support knowledge transfer, and continue to improve the management and leadership program for employee career and professional growth. Strategy B is to plan for succession of key positions where feasible. We'll do that by provide professional growth opportunities through stretch and temporary acting assignments. We will update recruitment and selection standard procedure to optimize employee engagement, performance, and retention. And strategy C is to promote a district culture which encourages learning, teamwork, and recognition. We'll do this by providing inclusive employee engagement programs which align with employee interests and support teamwork, and provide employee recognition programs which acknowledges employees for high-level performance and commitment in support of the district's mission and core values. Those are our 3 strategies for this goal. Questions and comments?
What is an employee engagement program?
Employee engagement program is, we have let me flip to that project section.
Is that social activities? Like the barbecue?
Some of
I
them,
don't know what that is.
Employee engagement programs include the surveys, the employee survey that we do. We have wellness and safety fairs, so there's all employee events. There's town hall events. There's certain.
It's your communication.
It's different efforts where it's interest based, and then some are strategic on the district side as well. So again, some of the examples of what we've done are the barbecue event, the town halls, the safety fair that we did last year that was very well received by staff, and then the employee survey. But consistently, when we do our employee survey, what we hear from staff is they want to have more events with all employees where they get to see and talk to employees that they don't often see every day working together, learn more about the different divisions, learn more about what's going on in terms of initiatives. So that's what we mean by employee engagement, opportunities for them to provide input into the district.
Are there, kind of to add to that, are there any opportunities regarding like team bonding where we bring in sometimes professional organizations with helping with that and running some types of you call it like fun in a sense games, but really they teach them skills on leadership and bond and working teamwork and other areas, and also teaches them to be a little more vulnerable with each other and working well with each other. So I'm just kind of curious to see, have we thought about bringing other organizations? Is that also part of the?
We do. We don't. It's sort of where we put things in terms of buckets. There's overlap. For our core program, we have emotional intelligence training. We have a number of different outside facilitators that come in and do some of those activities. Another one I would say is our buddy program that we've kind of restarted here, where new employees come in and we match them up with someone in a different area of the organization to sort of get to know the organization and be able to answer questions. As we move forward, we've started to look at that at a supervisor level as well in terms of having buddies. But yes, those are some of the programs that we do, and we're going to continue to expand.
Okay.
From a union contract standpoint, are there any issues with bullet number 1?
I'm not seeing a union issue there.
That's all I have.
So, safety. It was it's right now it's sitting in the 3rd bullet on B on the first setup. Do we need to, it's super important. We want everybody to come home from work. Do we need to make that more elevated, and should it be in workforce, or should it be in the environmental protection and regulatory compliance section?
Let us look at that, but I hear the comment is that we should elevate it. And so it's not at kind kind of, it's a little bit buried.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
that, the environmental health and safety program, as you pointed out, was under the environmental protection and regulatory compliance goal.
yeah, it's just, I want it to be
More prominent.
prominent because
Okay.
it's, at least to me, it's super important everybody gets home from work.
Totally agree. You guys know I'm big on safety, so I concur on that one. Any other comments? If not, I have one. All right. Just a question on strategy A. And I was kind of trying to read it back and forth, and I'm noticing overall the objective ties to the district's vision or mission and values, and you see how I just skipped over vision. And then if you go to 3A, there's no reference to either technology or innovation. So I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking that leading edge technology, driving innovation, and that could even mean attending other components, not just on job, not mentorship, and not just for leadership, but something a little bit more broad that captures it, where we're encouraging people to kind of think beyond, and you might have individuals that are really at the ground workforce that come up with a really amazing solution that's out of the box.
Yeah, like an idea pool, or so there's going to be a recognition program associated with that.
So I don't have verbiage to suggest outside of just saying areas to maybe
I
address.
can take that comment and work on drafting some language.
Can we go back to B? Update recruitment and selection standard procedures to optimize employee engagement, performance, and retention. I agree with performance and retention. I don't understand why employee engagement would be part of the selection process. And if you're recruiting them, they're not an employee. So are we changing our decision-making around hiring people?
Let me go back and look at this a little bit more in terms of trying to understand employee engagement and the selection. But part of it, when we're looking at recruitment, we're also looking at recruitment for internal promotional opportunities as well.
But you do talk about that in other places.
Okay.
I don't think it belongs in that bullet if you really want to focus what you're going to measure. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Nothing? All right. Back to you.
Okay. Take us now to goal 4, which has 3 strategies associated with it. And our why is to improve the resiliency of our operations against emergencies and future uncertainties through planning, long-term partnerships, and integrating technologies that improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our business processes. So, quick note before I get into the strategies. This was several goals in the previous plan, and we brought them together again to make them a bit broader, creating more emphasis on them, more importance to them, and also potentially increasing the success of these goals and the strategies associated. So the first strategy for goal 4 is to strengthen emergency preparedness and response plans. We'll do that by updating and maintaining emergency response and business continuity plans, manage inventory of emergency equipment, materials, and contracts, and review and exercise emergency communications, critical functions, information technology infrastructure, and more. The next strategy is to increase the resiliency of district water supplies and operations through long-term partnerships. We'll do that by working collaboratively with the Tri-Valley Water agencies to diversify and improve resiliency, and review and update our joint powers authorities and interagency agreements to reflect current practices and future needs. And the third strategy is to update and maintain a long-term plan to guide technology investments and resources. And we'll do that by implementing technologies that improve efficiency and effectiveness, and centralize, structure, and manage data to support consistent analysis and reporting. Any questions about this goal?
Any comments? I think I'm going to have a couple of general comments, and I didn't have the chance to write them down. Let's start off with 4C. I think inside of here, we may want to talk about our technology investments addressing and offsetting risks. And I'm trying not to say too many words on that on purpose. Regarding strategy 4B, to me, this doesn't read as a strong strategy. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because this is kind of sort of business as we are today. So I'm trying to say maybe we've got to kind of have something that reaches a little bit beyond just doing, Tri-Valley Water Agencies and the JPAs, but really trying to look beyond. And it could be where we partner in and learn from other organizations, evaluate opportunities, and champion, for whatever perspective, but championing where our values for resiliency can better come forward. So I'm not really sure how to put that out there. Not highly opinionated, but I'm just trying to say what we're showing right there doesn't wow me.
So on this one, this was carried over. A few thoughts on this. One is looking at some language that we can add to address being a little bit more aspirational in a few areas. I would also say, though, that there are certain things that fall under this in terms of a project list of updating agreements that have been on the list for the district for quite some time. And it would, I think, benefit us to keep that here so that we can, as we develop our work plan that out and elevate that and get that done. Though we do have a number of JPA agreements that are quite dated and don't reflect our current practices and are challenging to sort of use if they don't kind of bring us forward for the next 20 years. They served us very well for the last 20 to 40 years, but we need agreements that also guide us for the next 20 to 40 years. So perhaps we can rework this and try to address your comment.
I think what you said is even more critical, right? And I think it gets more to the point where you're kind of saying a reevaluation and update to the JPAs reflecting current practices and looking to the future, right? Something that really shows and demonstrates what we're going to be doing, right? I think it's maybe soft over here, right? And it's not reflective of maybe what the target is.
I mean, it's just not just review; it's update. I would get rid of review from a business as usual standpoint.
Yeah.
The action is to update them.
Yep.
Because it's not going to be status quo.
Correct.
The strategy as I see it is missing something, and that is something we've always prided ourselves in, and that's looking for alternatives. We talk about and operations through long-term partnerships, and I added in my notes and investigating all opportunities so that we aren't constrained to just look through East Bay Mud and Derwa and Lavma. We can say we are going to go out on our own. We've done that before. We haven't been able to financially afford to go out on our own, but that doesn't mean we can't look.
Project might be something that we might consider.
I just want to include something that keeps us looking. I don't want to confine us to just dealing with the long-term partnerships.
So maybe something to tying back to innovation again. Yeah. Innovation of solutions, or innovative partnerships.
We talked about the food recycling with the city of Dublin, right? And trying to bring in a project so that the food doesn't go to landfill, right? So maybe that's another example.
That would be and is one of the proposed projects under the first goal, which is energy, renewable energy. So I think when we break it down to the project level, exploring a food waste program is one of those. And then we just kind of space them out over 5 years.
Anything from this side of the dais?
Just when the senior staff was looking and putting this together, and we were talking about on the operations against emergencies and future uncertainties, are we talking about internal, here, or external, or both?
Both.
Okay. We may want to just clarify that a little bit more. I think that would be, if we can find some language to clarify that. Thank you.
I think on 4A, kind of piggybacking on something that you're kind of going, and it kind of made me just reflect. And it may be also making sure our emergency responses are reflecting on learned lessons locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally. And without, again, addressing anything specific per se, but making sure that we are doing the necessary updates.
And I think we're going to get gear up for catastrophe. We can gear up for a fire on a corner because the hydrant's been tested and working. But we can't gear up for every fire hydrant to be working. The reason I brought this up is I actually got it in a question in my emails from a customer that said, I don't understand why we can't solve all of this because you won't be able to afford it. Bottom line, but I think they're going to be more, they being the customer, is going to be more involved with finding out what kind of solutions we have. And maybe that means we sit down with the fire department and have a joint meeting with them to say, okay, if the worst happened here, which again is highly unlikely, but if it happened here, can we assure everybody that there's enough water in one place? This person was suggesting we get 2 or 3 more tanks. It's like, oh my God. No.
So are you maybe trying to say, and maybe what we've got to do in some level is a definition of what is emergency response and what is considered service? Right? Without calling it 100% out, because, I think
the realization
we have to have a plan.
That LA
Doesn't have enough water.
and San Diego are way out in left field. We're not going to be able to manage that kind of response either. But, I don't want to tell them, that's not the right word. I mean, I do want them to realize that we can't gear up for that kind of a situation. But I want them to understand what we can do.
And I think that kind of goes to my point of learned lessons, right? Where we're learning something from an incident, doing a reconnaissance, and then addressing it back as far as saying, what are we going to be set up to handle, right? It won't be like we're not going to be able to provide service kind of concept, or if we had a major earthquake, what kind of response would we have? We have a plan, right? But I think it's just incorporating all those learned lessons into our response plan.
Maybe there's an opportunity to change bullet number 2 from manage to optimize and speak to this large disaster, small disaster scenario somehow in that. I don't like the word manage. It's status quo. But I do like the idea of looking at what we have, what we can do, and then communicating what we can do with what we have versus the trade-off of buying more stuff or having more stuff or having more redundancy, etc. And us really understanding is, I don't know. Could we do?
No.
It never even occurred to me. Could we do something around? And at what point couldn't we? And because my mind always goes to the earthquakes, right? Now we bought a bunch of generators for PG&E power shutoffs, but it only buys us 72 hours. In the event of a major earthquake, we're not prepared, and we know that. So it gets to that trade-off of what are we willing to pay for. So that's why I like the word optimize, but we would have to understand what scenario we're driving towards, big, small, what scale, and what risk we're taking on with regards to that. And I don't understand from a district perspective where we are on that scale. So there'd be something in it for me to understand.
So maybe I can maybe look at it a different way and suggest optimize and invest appropriately. Because I guess what you're saying is if we manage, that means we manage what we have.
Right.
If you
Well,
optimize,
I read that as make a list of and make it part of the asset management strategy. Let's count them and let's maintain them.
So you don't want a log.
I don't want a list. I want to understand why I have it and what it does for me.
Does
And then,
does
yeah,
maybe
that
my
I've
suggestion
invested.
kind of lead
Yeah.
into that kind of zone?
Yeah, I like it.
Staff have enough direction to kind of maybe play with it?
We do. I think this is going to be one that's buildable. One of the first things we do need to do is have an effective management system or to inventory all of these different pieces of equipment and make sure that everyone has access and knows what we have when we have emergencies. But then in terms of making additional investments to maintain and address incidents of varying size, because incidents vary in size. If it's kind of to your question of, are we looking internal or external? When it's a small incident, we can handle it on our own. As it grows in size, we bring in and we reach out and have mutual aid agreements within the Tri-Valley. Then it gets beyond that scale. So these incidents are scalable, but I think that's where it's buildable and we can invest in, the language that you provided, we can work that into it.
This almost sounds like part of our dialogue here was providing a briefing back. This may be one of your items that would come back out.
I just want to understand the curve and where we are on the curve so that I can gauge whether that risk is appropriate and whether the investment is appropriate.
Is there anything systematic with the fire department as far as where they view, the urban wildlife interface, where they say this area scares excuse my language, the crap out of us, and some collaboration back and forth on.
I'll start this and then I might ask Steve Delight to chime in here, but certainly the wildfires in Southern California have raised a lot of questions and concerns, and in terms of agencies reaching out. I know that San Ramon Fire has reached out to East Bay Mud, has reached out to us, and I think there's going to be a lot more dialogue.
Do we need like a joint meeting or something? I mean, do we need to actually...
I believe, and this is where I'm going to pivot and turn this over to Steve, and maybe you can share where we are with the conversations and the information we're providing in terms of coordinating with local fire.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Actually, I have a meeting with them tomorrow with their battalion chief to talk. There's a short list of things that they're curious about, where our water comes from. And
if we open 55
to Doherty Valley
hydrants at once, what's going to happen, kind of thing.
Right, all of those sorts of things. And so I was planning on going over that with them tomorrow, and then getting them the appropriate paperwork that they have, because they've also been fielding a lot of phone calls like, could this happen in my neighborhood? So I was going to provide that information.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think they need some assurance as to whether or not when they hook up to the fire hydrant, there's going to be water there.
Well,
for how long?
If you open 50 of them at once, not very long.
Which is what I told
Yeah.
this particular customer, yes, we can handle it. Yes, they're reviewed on a rotating basis. They all work.
Right.
like they're supposed to, but you can't turn them all on at the same time because we are going to have problems
You
there.
have white and you have purple,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
different systems.
Would staff like to respond to that? Of, about not being all on, or what are our limitations, or anything that we have to be aware of?
Our typical design, which is typical across the industry, it's a little bit different depending on the zone, but it's typically for 2 simultaneous like house fires or commercial business fire per zone at a time, right? So you could have, a house fire behind the district office over here and maybe one across town, but 2 fires at a time, typically at about 2,000 gallons a minute for 2 hours. That's the design that we currently.
And that's the industry regulated standard.
Correct. It's not regular. It's just like kind of common. West Yost could probably comment on that as well from all the master planning they do. But it's standard. It's what I've seen for my entire career here. And I see Doug raising his hand. I feel like no, scratching your head. Okay. But and then like down here in our lower zone where you have the larger businesses or where there's a school, it's usually like 4,000 gallons a minute for 4 hours, which drives the size of the pipelines headed to that site and the size of the water tanks in each zone as well.
Plus, if you're lower, you have more zones that you can drain into
Correct.
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to make sure that we had a little clarification on maybe speculative statements.
To your comment about things adapting, like I am sure there's going to be new codes that come out after what has happened in Southern California that we will then adjust to as time goes on as we update our planning documents.
I watched one of the channels did a special on the fires preparedness in San Francisco, and I found out something they did after Loma Prieta. They've now installed over 200 cisterns underneath the streets so that they won't have the same thing that happened in 1906 where they didn't have water. Now they finally have water, plus they have fire boats. It's amazing at what they've done. And, I wasn't even aware that they had put that much into preparing for it.
Let's move back on to point for this. Any other commentary or modifications that we need to suggest to staff for this strategy? Turning back over to staff.
Thank you for the comments and the responses from Steve and Jan. Thank you. Okay, goal 5, long-term infrastructure investment. This has 3 associated strategies. Cost-effectively manage, maintain, and improve infrastructure to deliver sustainable, reliable, high-quality service now and in the future. I'll make a comment about this that, again, this was pulled from 2023 and has been updated into a broader goal to further emphasize it. This goal is also consistent with industry trends. So the first strategy associated with this goal is to maintain coordinated master plans for all facilities and assets. We'll do that by periodically updating and maintaining a master plan for each group of assets or systems that reflects current condition and performance and more. Strategy B is to optimize the asset management program to guide district business decisions. We'll do that by standardizing and implementing district-wide procedures and plans for the asset management program and use asset management data to determine criticality, maximize the life of assets, and budget for long-term capital replacement needs. And strategy C is to manage and implement a prioritized capital improvement plan to address long-term infrastructure needs. We'll do that by planning and designing capital projects to improve resiliency and meet or surpass environmental and regulatory requirements, and coordinate and collaborate construction project scheduling with city, county, and stakeholders to minimize impacts on communities. Any questions about Goal 5?
Looking around, any comments?
I have one.
Go ahead.
I don't really understand the difference between A and B. So a master plan is different than your asset inventory. I kind of get that. But this still reads like I've got paper, I'm reading it, I'm counting things. Isn't A business as usual? Do we need A?
Well, I suppose, I mean, the master plans are, again, like we just talked in the last item, things are always changing as we're updating master plan for the water system or the collection system. We will be evaluating new ways to potentially deal with changed conditions. So, for example, on the collection system a few years ago, when we had the big storm on New Year's Eve, we joke about the big storm happening on New Year's Eve. That was a 100-year storm. If things continue in the way they are, where events are more common, more extreme events are more common, we may need to look at adjusting our planning procedures or ideas for making sure that we can continue to in that case on the wastewater treat through storms like that, not only on the collection side but at the wastewater treatment plant.
I could just add, Steve, on some of these. Part of it, the master plans, they're current and they're forward looking. We're looking out 15, 20 years. They're the basis for looking at capacity reserve fees, development. They reflect changes, as Steve mentioned, in the industry. For example, the new nutrient requirements that we have to deal with for wastewater treatment plants, conservation requirements, which are changing our water demands, which will have an impact on our infrastructure as well. So we want to have a set of master plans that can guide our decisions now and into the future. The strategy B is really focused on managing our assets, trying to maximize the life of all of our infrastructure and make sure that we have a plan for replacing that infrastructure as it ages out.
Yeah, do the assets support the master plan?
They are coordinated. There is a linkage between them.
So is B a bullet under A?
Asset management, and then, I know both Ken and Steve have a lot to add, but asset management is really the life of the asset from the beginning of when you purchase it all the way to when you decommission it and you have to book it on your financial statement. So it's different.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the way that and you said it well, is A looks forward. What do we need to do to survive and manage through the change that we're all facing all the time? And B looks backwards. It's we own this pile of stuff, and how do we get the most out of it?
Maintain it, and then do I replace it? Okay, I'm willing to keep it separate. Thank you for the discussion. I have these things and I update them.
So maybe
I don't know that we have changed it. I don't know that I changed
it goes back to the sort of over-encompassing direction that
just
perhaps
don't
the
know
board
that doesn't feel like
right,
strategy.
and perhaps the board wants to weigh in.
Okay.
Is trying to find that right blend for a strategic plan that is actionable but also aspirational. There's quite a bit of work here at the district, and that takes a lot of effort, that we did want to try, staff felt, to capture in the strategic plan so that staff and the public understands that these are a priority as well. So that was the blend we were trying to shoot for. So not every element may seem as aspirational. There might be a business as usual emphasis to it, but it's an important and critical part of our business.
Maybe I can offer some thoughts on maybe changing some words. So if you pull up 5A, instead of the word maintain, to make it a little bit more aspirational,
Great.
ensure a maintained and coordinated master plan for all facilities and assets. Just food for thought.
Yep.
David, did you want to comment on word choice?
Aha.
We do have a
They struck a lot of staffs.
within the strategic planning world. We have a phobia of ensure, as it's a promise, and yeah. So, but
but we can certainly take your
Strengthen that.
comment and strengthen that. I think that comment is
No, you're still
something we can do.
Pull out the
Jan.
thesaurus and find
So,
another word
if
from
you don't mind,
that.
one more.
Yeah.
5D, if you don't mind. Bullet number 2, I might have a similar feedback, but instead of the word use, how about leverage? All right. Got through with one of them.
That one's okay. Going over to legal,
Been
that
around.
okay?
No, it's just a clarification. So going back to 5A, we talk about master plans in general. What is our policy on like how often do we revise those?
I can
Generally,
take it.
go ahead.
No, I can't take
Sorry, is that a
these
loaded
boring
question
ones.
here?
I gotta let you take them.
Generally around 5 years,
Okay.
plus or minus. You know, if there was something that maybe hadn't changed much, you might push it out a little longer, but generally around 5 years.
Great, thank you.
5 years, or when conditions change dramatically enough that we need to update them.
So we will do A within the life of this strategic plan. Yes or no?
Oh, yeah.
I would say it depends on when the different ones are up for review. There are some master plans that sometimes we don't update for, say, 7 years if conditions really don't change that warrant an update.
Okay.
I mean, we have about, what, 5, 6 master plans of various types. I know we have a collection, we have a regional, we have an employment one, we have a facilities of various
Water,
types.
IT.
So we have half dozen of them probably,
Correct.
Energy.
Yeah.
Energy.
and they come around
Energy
about
now.
every, yeah.
So you don't want to insure and promise anything, huh?
Okay with promising, as long as it's not written down.
Touche. All right. Any other comments or questions? Turn it back to staff.
Thank you. Okay. Now bring us to our sixth and last goal, customer service and community engagement. Again, elevated, broadened from our 2023 plan. This was talked about a lot at the planning session as well within the surveys and interviews that the element of customer interactions with staff is one of the best ways to engage customers. And so emphasizing that was really important. We know that we can do all of the things that we've identified through goals, 1 and 5, but it's equally as important to communicate these efforts, understanding, and wins to the community, to build trust, to deepen their understanding, and to elevate the district in the public's eyes as leaders who are protective, innovative, and resilient. We have 2 strategies associated with this goal, which is to foster confidence and trust in district services through quality customer service, community engagement, education, and partnership efforts. Our first strategy associated with this goal is to provide quality service and timely information and resolution of customer inquiries. And we'll do this by formalizing a customer service program that provides quality customer service and tracks performance. Strategy B is to build public awareness through outreach and education of district services, priorities, and initiatives. We'll do this by redesigning the website and leveraging social media platforms to improve accessibility. Leverage the Tri-Valley and regional partnerships to maximize public outreach and communication on water. And educate and engage the community on water, wastewater treatment, and recycled water services. Any questions or comments about Goal 6?
Anyone?
You know, I'm big into community outreach, so no, I think that's good.
I think if you go to 6A for a second, I think the piece inside of here that I'm not seeing is maybe pushing the boundaries on the customer communication side to the point where instead of like just formalizing, but up to even like leveraging technology, minimizing the turnaround time, being proactive, something of that nature. And I think it's things that we may be thinking about and doing or aspiring to do, but we're not giving ourselves credit by when we say formalize. It's kind of like
Improve delivery through technology and cost-saving initiatives or something like that.
There you go. And timely response, something of that nature.
Cycle time, or a technology theme.
Basically, what we were envisioning was to fully document and develop a level of service for customer service. And some of the ideas that we've had, this is draft at this point, it's unfinished, but initiate customer service surveys, that would track performance, and the survey may have like an overall question, how would you rate the district's service, and we want to get like the target would be like to get to the 90% or above, something of that nature. We want to respond, within specified time frames if someone leaves a question, on the email box or in the voicemail, that, we would respond to those questions within, whatever makes the most sense. But say it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour or something like that, so that we put, some actionable time frames on, when we will get back with that customer. Respond within a specified, well, I said that already, and then provide also, forms and customer information, brochures, like guidance on leaks, for permissible adjustments, or, things like, ways to pay your bill, have a form on that we could either provide to a customer at the counter, or, email it to them, if they'd like. Our low income program, things along those lines, and just have a series of customer information brochures, that we could provide to them. So
Yeah,
that's where we were going with it.
And I think I'm saying let's go to the next step.
I think we can do both, which is formalize and promote what we have, and then leverage technology with conversion to Munis. We have more ways and increasingly improved ways to communicate with our customers, and we can use some of those as well.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. One of your outputs, and you kind of said it, was a threshold. So executive dashboards utilizing KPIs for immediate visibility and reaction and response. I mean, that's what you're going to be doing on the back end, theoretically, if you had the data.
Yeah. So one thing I would like to see is, we used to have a program, and I know that staffing got wonky and the systems got wonky. The proactive leak detection. When, I've had a toilet, and I'm going to say it on camera, and I'm going to be in trouble. I've had a toilet run for a little bit right now. I'm getting it fixed. Back in the day, I would have gotten a phone call saying, Rich, and it wasn't because I was a board member, it's because I was a customer. Rich, we detected that your water is always running. You have a leak somewhere, and we want to help you fix it. I know that kind of fell apart during the transition on the ERP systems and such, but I'd love to, that's the kind of thing that was really a value add. I'd love to get that back.
Notify customers if they're having excessive water usage or something.
Yeah, or
constant.
It never goes to zero.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a call. Funny story. I was in the line at the Dole Plantation in Hawaii with my family many years ago, and I get a call in the line. It's a district saying your water's running. Something's wrong, and we got it fixed. But that was really valuable, I think. And I know we have we have that data. It's just we have to kind of get the muscle memory back to pull it off.
Well, if it helps, we got that call at my mother-in-law's place a year and a half ago.
Here or?
Yeah, in Dublin.
Yeah.
And it was Aquahawk and the district saying, "Hey, by the way, you got a leak."
Oh, good. So it's
it's still there, is what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But
yeah,
I agree.
I have two more things. I don't know whether it belongs here, whether it belongs under resiliency, but we do know that there is more ransomware attacks, and customer data privacy is becoming more of an issue. Do we need, maybe it doesn't belong in the strategic plan, but if we're going to emphasize technology, I would like one of those outcomes to be protecting people's data and us beefing up our systems so that we don't wind up with some sort of fault.
I think it was kind of sort of piggybacking off the comment.
In fact, we can incorporate that.
And maybe it's under resiliency, maybe it's here, but I like the customer focus, talking about customer data versus our data, and being really transparent about that. And since one of our values is being open and transparent. There's nothing in here about PFAS. And there's nothing in here about our landfill. Do we need something that speaks to that as an emerging issue? Whether we call it out specifically or et cetera, that we are proactive about emerging contaminants, or we are proactive about.
So would it be covered underneath our regulatory one?
Maybe.
That was the intention, was the regulatory landscape includes quite a few different emerging contaminants and working
So that would
collaborative.
be an item
Correct,
number
correct. And that is, participating in regional PFAS studies is one of the efforts under that.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd want to call off specifics, right?
Well, that's why it was okay until I got to the very end, and then I realized this didn't feel like it was looking at the greatest issue we probably face in the next 2 years. Is what is our position on that? How is that going to impact our budget? And how are we going to manage that as a collective group of Tri-Valley agencies? And like you said, maybe it isn't item number 1.
Correct.
But when I read it, I didn't see it. And I want us to be really transparent that there's probably some budget impact to that. And if it's our strategy to be in front of it versus a follower, then I was just curious if we needed to call it out so that we have a metric on it.
I think number 1 says it meet or exceed environmental and public health standards while preparing for the future regulatory landscape.
Okay.
Yeah. But if we're going to move the safety bullet to employees, then maybe there's some room there as well.
I mean, I think staff kind of heard.
Yeah.
Maybe take a review and see if there's something that can come back.
I'm actually pretty comfortable after this conversation that it's in item number 1, as long as we all understand that.
Well, I mean, if it needs to be bolstered up or there's an opportunity.
I just want to make sure that we have eyes on it and it's not something we're going to run away from. Okay.
So, one comment is I like the streamlined approach. I mean, this plan used to be 20 pages. Now we got it down to like 5. I also really appreciate the remember to breathe not being in there. There's nothing in there about rate studies. There's nothing in there about employee contracts, that kind of stuff, because we have to do that. So it's not a strategic, leaving that out makes perfect sense. These are things that are, a strategic that aren't things we have to do. And I really appreciate the fact that we don't have this cluttered up with a bunch of stuff that's like, do a rate study. Well, no.
But that could be done in the master plan.
Yeah. Exactly.
I did have one final question. I don't want to dominate the conversation, but we did, last time we walked through this, have a lot of discussion about numbers. And these are ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in this presentation. When the strategy is published and it's 1-pager, will these be numbered? And do you see these numbers as a reflection of priority?
We also had quite a bit of discussion on this.
Just curious.
We view all of these as equally important and intertwined to be able to meet the district's mission, vision, and values. Having said that, for the purpose of this conversation, we felt it would have been overly challenging to go back and forth without numbers. As we move toward actually packaging this into the strategic plan, we may pull out the numbers or look for another way to display the information that we can still reference the goals easily. Now that there's only 6 goals, we did feel more comfortable numbering them because, before when we had 10 goals, I think the concern was perhaps the public stops reading at number 5. But now that there's less goals and they're shortened in title, they're not long sentences, we think that we can look at a way to format in a way that still, draws the eye toward all 6 goals. But that will be something West Jost will certainly look at as they package this up.
I was going to say, look at his next slide. The one that goes into that.
Yeah, so here are our unnumbered 6 goals that we are very proud of. Yeah.
But I'd like to pause you on that for a quick sec. And it's going to be Are those the infographics that we're intending to move forward with?
I think that's an ongoing conversation. We wanted to create quick accessibility during this presentation, which is why we went with different shapes, colors, etc. We'll see when we get to sort of the next phase. We have a lot of different options of how we can lay it out, and we've been working with Jan about.
The draft that will come before the board, part of why there's quite a bit of gap between now and March 4th is that you will see the actual draft plan with the photos and the graphics as laid out.
Was there an icon in particular?
Yeah.
Disliked?
I did.
Uh-oh.
How intuitive.
How did I know?
Didn't like the tools? You didn't like the tools?
There you go.
Oh.
So I was going to say, if I did not number it and I looked on the second row, the bottom one, from left to right, the leftmost and the middle one would potentially be two infographics that I would maybe adjust.
I can ensure that we will address that.
We're a water agency, so maybe there's something around the spigot or something.
I love that.
Right? Yeah, so.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed presenting these 6 goals, and now I'm going to turn it back over to Abigail Madrone.
Thank you, David. I'm here to wrap it up. Thank you for the lively discussion, great comments, suggestions, questions. This has been really meaningful and excellent to see such an engaged board of directors that are really invested in getting this right. So thank you. So next steps. The second draft of the strategic plan will be discussed with the board on March 4th. As Jan mentioned, we have a lot of time to work with staff, incorporate comments and feedback, and deliver a second draft that hopefully will resonate with all the comments and feedbacks and suggestions. Staff anticipate making or asking the board to consider the adoption of the final 2025 strategic plan on March 18th. And a preview of what's to come following the adoption of the strategic plan by the board, a work plan will be developed with clearly defined schedule and resources to accomplish the goals and objectives. So to remind you, the work plan is the second phase following strategic plan adoption. I think this will also provide a lot of clarity. This is meant to be a guiding tool for staff to drive the actions and implementation. The work plan will include the goal clearly identified, as well as the lead and support departments will be noted on the work plan. And the goal, strategy, and objective will also be referenced for ease of use and tracking. And the projects will be clearly identified, as well as the timeline to accomplish those projects. As Jan mentioned, this is a multi-year implementation. And so staff is working on developing specific project lists to support the implementation of the plan.
Question?
With that, we thank you and welcome any more general comments and questions.
Just just a question on this. So, well, first of all, nice presentation. Thank you to both of you for putting together. Thank you also to staff for on the retreat for taking your time to put this together. So one of the things as I saw this with the goals, how are we measuring success? And what I mean by that is, looking at, like, for example, the outcomes. Are we looking at when we hit these goals, is it green, yellow, red? Are we looking and putting against like KPIs? What are we doing to measure success for these specific goals and outcomes?
I can start and then you can chime in. The intent is after the board adopts the strategic plan is to develop this work plan where we put together the projects and the timeline. There will be a period of transition. We're sort of finishing off the strategic plan format from 2024 to 2028 and then moving into this new format. Many of the projects and initiatives that were outlined in 2024, 2028 are the ones that we're working on right now. But the thought is that we put this together, and when we come before the board, and this was some feedback we received in August when we did the last progress report on the strategic plan to the board, that you wanted to see something more measurable, like yellow, green, blue, red, what's slipping behind, do we potentially need more resources. And we will use this tracking tool to present that information to the board, and that will be the guide to measure success.
So just to be clear, so we're going to be, once we approve this will then replace the 2024 to 2028.
Correct. This is the 5-year strategic plan for 2026 to 2030, fiscal years 2026 to 2030. So it will take effect on July 1st, 2025.
Okay, the fiscal year. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Any other?
Did Abigail, did you want to add more toward?
Jan, you did a tremendous job. This is meant
Train me well.
Wonderful, Jan. Let's celebrate that.
You're just worried that if you say more, that some of these guys may ask more questions, right?
No, we, as David, my colleague, mentioned, we thrive on questions, comments. So thank you.
I'll ensure none of that happens. Just joking. On that note, thank you for a great presentation. Well put together. Staff, great job. Looking forward to seeing what you come back with your revisions on March 4th. No other comments, questions? Excellent. I think staff's got what they need. We'll move on to item 9. 9A, board items. Seeing that there were no Joint Power Authority meeting committee reports, confirming as such. Okay. Any submittal of written reports for days of service for events attended by directors? Director Juanita Leopold.
I attended the Alameda County Special District's general meeting on January 8th at CV San. We're going to continue meeting at CV San and allow the corporate members to buy the goodies for if it's a breakfast at 8 o'clock. They should be in their new building by the 1st of March. That's what they're hoping. We all know how that goes. We then had a presentation from the lab person at the Mosquito Control Board. It was rather interesting because there's apparently, I forget the number he exactly used, but several dozen different kinds of mosquitoes. And they bring, yes, I know, I thought there was one. And they bring, of course, there are all sorts of diseases with them. Right now, they have tracked down a group of them that came in from Tanzania and Ethiopia. And I forget the disease. I'm sorry, I'm just not into those kinds of things. But they are very concerned because they are introduced here in Alameda County, and they don't want them. Well, it's working. They don't want it to exceed anything. So it was really an interesting presentation. They believe that the marsh restoration is going to help contain it. They're very into, if you see something, please report it. They'll come out and check. There's just too many things going on now with international travel and how people bring bugs and things back to us. So they're very, very involved in trying to make sure people understand that they want to know about these things. The second presentation was from our new corporate member, Enterprise Mobility. This particular branch is headquartered in San Ramon, and they have 300 California government customers, which I was kind of surprised. They're into leasing fleet vehicles rather than purchasing. We've always purchased, but one of the interesting things is if we happen to get involved in this, and they do all size equipment, trucks and everything else. It could be an additional employee benefit. because we'll get corporate rates when we rent a car. So it's just something to look at. Again, it's a different approach. It's not something we've ever done, but given the argument with electric and gasoline these days, maybe it's a new way to go. Anyway, I gave the cards to Jan and she gave them to Dan, so they're very aggressive, so I'll put them in charge. Or Dan, you get to take them on. Let's see. And then, of course, we discussed our general meeting on March 13th, the dinner at Wedgewood at Redwood Canyon. And then in May, we're meeting at Livermore, or the host is Livermore Recreation and Park District. And then we're going to host in July. So that was it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I just make a quick announcement?
No.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
No.
Go ahead.
Just if you don't know, the city of San Ramon is having their State of the Union on March 5th. So just if anyone's interested. City of San Ramon, yeah.
Okay. Any items for a future agenda? Okay, I think I mentioned in that presentation about a potential briefing because there was some indication of not having information. You remember which one that one is? It was tied to emergency preparedness and response.
Correct. That item is coming before the board on February 18th.
Perfect. Thank you so much. With that, we'll move on to 9B, staff reports.
2 quick announcements. The Casa Naqua conference is January 28th through 31st, and the next DERWA board meeting will be on Monday, February 3rd. Oh, Casa Naqua. It's Casa and then Naqua.
Yes.
So Naqua, the national version, they just ended up having their conference the same exact days, 20 minutes away from Casa. And so they are 2 separate conferences, to clarify, but there is a mixer between the 2 organizations.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and move to adjournment. The meeting is adjourned at 7:32. Have a good evening.